The first text arrived like a cold splash of water in the middle of a sweltering day. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and instinctively I reached for it, thinking it was her asking about the moving truck, or maybe confirming the final details for our new apartment. Instead, the screen lit up with something I never expected. LOL. You think I'd skip my art gala just because you're moving? I stared at the message, the words swimming in front of my eyes. My mind went blank for a moment. Art gala, moving. How could those two things even be in the same sentence? I blinked, rereading it. Surely I had misread, or maybe she sent it to the wrong person. But no, the name at the top was hers, exactly hers. I thought back to the weeks leading up to this day. We had spent nights packing boxes, arguing over what furniture to keep, what pictures to hang, and what dreams to compromise. Every decision had been a negotiation, a dance between her spontaneous impulses and my carefully laid plans. And now, at the climax of all that effort, she sent me this text, as if our shared life was nothing more than a backdrop for her own ambitions. Guess I misjudged, I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. It felt too small, too weak, too polite for the anger and hurt boiling inside me. But I wanted to maintain some semblance of calm. I didn't want to start a war over text, especially not today when I was already emotionally exhausted from the packing. She didn't reply immediately, and the silence that followed was deafening. I looked around the apartment we were leaving, boxes stacked like small monuments to our shared memories, and I realized I barely recognized the place anymore. Every photo frame, every book on the shelf, even the faint smell of her favorite candles seemed tainted now, as if the apartment itself had been lying to me, hiding the truth about us behind walls I thought we both cared about. I tried to focus on the task at hand. I moved to the living room, lifting a box labeled fragile with a trembling hand. I knew some things I couldn't pack. The arguments we had, the dreams we shared that now felt like illusions, and the subtle betrayals that had been weaving themselves into our story for months. Packing became a surreal experience, moving physical items, while my emotional landscape was collapsing. Her gala wasn't just any event. It was the pinnacle of her career ambitions. A night where she would be photographed among people whose names I could barely pronounce. I had always known she had aspirations, but I believed she would balance them with the life we were building together. I had imagined her pausing for me, even briefly, during crucial moments. Instead, the text suggested she had already chosen a different priority. I paused in the middle of the room and scrolled through old messages, photos, and little notes she had sent over the past year. There were so many moments where she had seemed attentive, affectionate, even present. And yet, right here, in this single line of text, all of that seemed like a mirage. It was as if our relationship had been a performance she had staged perfectly for the outside world. But behind the curtains, her heart had been elsewhere. I sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had missed the signs, the late nights at the gallery, the secret phone calls, the unspoken distances. Had I really misjudged her all along? Or had I been blind because I wanted to believe in us too desperately? The phone buzzed again. My heart skipped a beat, expecting another scolding text or a flippant comment. But this time, it wasn't her towards the gallery. They had left a voicemail for her, and I could hear the curator's voice echoing faintly when I played it aloud. He spoke with a mix of urgency and excitement, mentioning an exclusive opportunity, a chance for her work to be showcased in a way that could change everything. My chest tightened. The implications were clear. Her world was moving at a speed I wasn't part of, a world I hadn't been invited to, and perhaps never would be. I stood up, pacing through the half-packed apartment. I could feel the weight of the boxes pressing against my chest, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Each item I touched reminded me of a memory: her laughter in the kitchen, the way she used to run her fingers along the bookshelf, the nights we stayed up planning our future. And yet, beneath these memories lay the undeniable truth. She had already decided her future didn't need me in it. Hours passed, and the apartment slowly emptied, leaving only shadows of what had once been. My phone remained silent, the absence of her messages louder than any words could be. I began to understand that this wasn't just about the gala or the packing, it was about choice, priorities, and the painful realization that sometimes love alone isn't enough to bridge the distance between two people whose paths are diverging by evening. I had finished packing the last box. The apartment was empty, save for the echoes of laughter and arguments that seemed to linger in the corners. I took one last look around, the weight of unspoken feelings pressing down on me, and walked out the door. Outside, the city lights flickered like tiny, indifferent witnesses to our unraveling story. And somewhere, she was likely stepping into a world where I didn't exist. A world that had no room for my presence, my support, or the sacrifices I had made for us. As I drove away, the silence in the car was both suffocating and liberating. I realized that this was only the beginning, not just of our physical separation, but of the emotional journey that would force me to confront love, betrayal, and the harsh truths we often ignore until it's too late. The next morning, I woke up in the temporary apartment I had rented, the one-bedroom place that smelled faintly of fresh paint and antiseptic cleaning spray. It wasn't home. Not yet, not really. Every corner reminded me of her absence, and I realized how intertwined our lives had been, so much so that even a small, empty space felt like a vacuum. I scrolled through my phone again, almost hoping to see a message from her. Anything to explain, apologize, or even taunt me further. But there was nothing. Silence stretched like a thick fog. I knew I had to find out the truth. I couldn't simply accept the vague impression left by her text and the curator's voicemail. I needed details. Context, something concrete that would explain why she had prioritized the gala over what we had built together. With a hesitant breath, I decided to visit the gallery myself. The gallery wasn't far, but as I drove through the streets, my mind replayed our relationship in slow motion. Every argument, every laugh, every compromise, all of it suddenly felt fragile, like a glass sculpture teetering on the edge of a table. I wondered if she had ever cared about my feelings, or if she had been so absorbed in her ambitions that she had stopped noticing me entirely. The city passed by in a blur, but my mind remained trapped in the past, scanning for signs I should have seen when I arrived. The gallery's glass doors reflected the late morning sun, almost blinding in its brightness. Inside, the air smelled of varnish and polished wood. I hesitated at the reception desk, my heart pounding. The receptionist looked up, polite but slightly cautious, as if she could sense the storm brewing inside me. "I need to see the curator," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Mr. Harris?" she asked, confirming my identity with a raised eyebrow. "He's expecting someone." "No, but it's important." "It's about her," I replied, my words faltering under the weight of uncertainty. After a brief pause, she nodded and led me through a hallway lined with abstract paintings and sculptures, each one vibrant, provocative, and untouchable. It struck me then, her world, her ambitions, her life outside of me, was a gallery of experiences I had never truly entered. I realized I had been standing outside the frames, looking in, never understanding the intensity of the universe she was creating around herself. Finally, we reached a small office at the back. The curator, a man in his 40s with sharp features and an aura of authority, looked up from a stack of papers. His eyes softened when he saw my expression, a mixture of concern and confusion. "You're here about her?" he asked directly, without preamble. "Yes," I said, swallowing hard. "I need to understand." "Everything." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "She's ambitious. You know that, right? But this isn't just ambition, it's obsession. She's been working on a project that could define her career for years. The Gala is part of it, yes, but there's more. She believes she's on the verge of something unprecedented, something she can't risk missing." I nodded slowly, but my chest felt heavy. "I understand ambition, I really do. But what about us? What about the plans we made, the life we're supposed to build together?" The curator's gaze was steady, almost piercing. "She's not trying to hurt you, but love. Love doesn't always fit neatly into our expectations. She's making choices based on her world, her timeline. You have to decide if you can exist in that space, or if you need a different path entirely." His words hit me like a hammer. I had always imagined love as mutual support, a shared journey where we leaned on each other through every obstacle. And yet here it was raw, unfiltered reality. She had created a world where I wasn't an integral part of the equation. I left the gallery feeling like I had been shown a door I couldn't open. Every step back to the car was heavy, my mind replaying scenes from our apartment. Her text, the boxes, the whispered promises we had once made. I began to see cracks I had ignored. Moments where her choices subtly favored herself over us, not maliciously, but inevitably, as if gravity had slowly shifted her priorities. Over the next few days, I tried to communicate, tried to reach her, but she was unreachable. At first, I thought she was just busy, but slowly, the truth revealed itself. She had immersed herself in a network of people, events, and opportunities that left no room for me. My calls went unanswered, my messages read but never replied to. It was as if our connection had been a thin thread that snapped under the weight of her ambitions. I started to investigate quietly, piecing together her schedule, her collaborations, and the gallery's announcements. Each discovery brought a mix of admiration and heartbreak. I had loved a woman with brilliance, creativity, and drive, but in loving her, I had never fully realized that her world was not built to include me. She hadn't lied, not exactly, but she had chosen a path where my role was peripheral, optional, never central. The deeper I delved, the more I realized the magnitude of what had shifted. Her passion was contagious, inspiring even, but it had become a wedge between us. Every painting, every project, every whispered conversation in the gallery carried her further from me. And yet, despite the pain, I couldn't help but feel awe at her dedication, her audacity, her unwillingness to compromise herself entirely for love. That night, I sat alone in my temporary apartment, the city's hum pressing against the window like a reminder of the life moving outside. I thought about what the curator had said. You have to decide if you can exist in that space. The words replayed in my mind over and over until they became a question I couldn't escape. Could I exist in her world? Could I be a witness to her brilliance without losing myself in the process? Or was our love, as intense as it had been, doomed to falter under the weight of irreconcilable priorities? Sleep didn't come easily. Every shadow, every flicker of the streetlights outside seemed to whisper possibilities, warnings, and regrets. And as the night deepened, I realized that the answers I sought weren't going to be handed to me. I would have to confront them, face her, and navigate the tangled maze of ambition, desire, and heartbreak that had become the new reality of us. The following morning, I made a decision I had been avoiding for days. I needed to see her, not for apologies, not for confrontation, but to face the truth, whatever that truth might be. I didn't know if this meeting would save us, destroy what remained, or simply confirm the inevitability I had sensed in the past week. I drove through the city streets, each stoplight a small test of my resolve. When I arrived at the Gala venue, the energy inside was electric, a dazzling mix of art enthusiasts, photographers, and patrons in glittering attire. I paused at the entrance, feeling the weight of my emotions, anticipation, fear, and an unexpected twinge of awe. She was here, in her element, radiating confidence and brilliance. The crowd seemed drawn to her as if her very presence defined the space. I realized, painfully, that this was her world, fully alive, fully realized, and I was merely an outsider standing at the threshold. I spotted her across the room, her laughter ringing out, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she engaged with the curator and other artists. For a moment, I felt a pang of jealousy and sorrow, but also pride. She had achieved something extraordinary, something that demanded recognition. And yet, my presence here was necessary not as a supporter of her career, but as someone who needed closure, someone who needed to understand what had become of us. I approached her cautiously, unsure if she would even acknowledge me. When our eyes met, there was a flicker of recognition, a brief hesitation before she forced a polite smile. "You came," she said, her tone carefully neutral, almost rehearsed. "I needed to," I replied. "I needed to see you, to understand, to—" My voice faltered. Words felt inadequate for the emotions roiling inside me. "To know if there's still—" "Us," she sighed, glancing around the room, clearly aware of the eyes that might be watching. "This is my night," she said softly, almost a whisper. I can't be the person you need me to be right now." Her words hit me harder than any argument we had ever had. I had imagined countless scenarios where love could bridge ambition, where we could balance dreams with reality. But standing here, in the glittering gallery, I saw the truth starkly illuminated. Her life had evolved beyond the confines of our relationship, beyond the compromises I had imagined possible. "Then tell me," I said, voice low but steady, "what do we do? What happens to us?" She looked down for a moment, then back at me, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered, "but I can't give up this. I can't pause my life, my work, for us, not now, maybe not ever. I love you, but love isn't always enough." Those words, simple and devastating, reverberated through me. I realized that love alone couldn't reconcile to diverging paths. We had shared moments of passion, of joy, of tenderness, but the paths we were on were no longer aligned. Her ambitions demanded a world I couldn't inhabit, a life that left no room for compromise. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I understand," I said finally. "It hurts, but I understand. And I want you to succeed, truly." But we can't continue like this. Not without losing ourselves. She nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. I'll always care about you, she said, and I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. For a long moment, we stood there, the noise of the gala fading around us, leaving only the unspoken acknowledgement of love, loss, and acceptance. I realized that this was a turning point, not just an ending, but a reckoning with reality, a chance to rebuild our lives individually, stronger and more aware of what we truly needed. I left the gala quietly, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, indifferent yet comforting. I drove through empty streets, my heart heavy yet strangely liberated. The truth had been revealed, painful though it was, and now I could begin the slow process of healing, of learning to cherish the love we had without clinging to what could never be. Days turned into weeks, and I gradually rebuilt my routines, my sense of self, my perspective on love and ambition. I realized that her brilliance, her drive, and her choices didn't diminish what we had shared, they merely reframed it. We had loved deeply, passionately, but sometimes loving someone also meant letting them go. Months later, I passed by a gallery where her work was displayed prominently. I stopped, taking in the colors, the emotion, the daring energy of her creations. A smile crossed my face, bittersweet yet genuine. She had achieved what she set out to do, and I had survived what I never expected to endure. We had both moved forward, separately but with an unspoken acknowledgement that our love, though no longer together, had shaped us irrevocably. And in that moment, I understood that love is not always about possession, about shared plans or cohabitation. Sometimes, love is about witnessing another person's growth, cheering them silently, and walking away with your own life, ready to embrace the future with newfound clarity and strength. The memory of her text, that cold initial shock, no longer haunted me. It had been the catalyst, the trigger that forced us both to confront reality. And through the pain, the heartbreak, and the acceptance, I had discovered something essential: the capacity to love without holding on, to let go without forgetting, and to step into the next chapter of life with courage, resilience, and a heart still open to the possibility of love this time, in a world where the paths I walked were truly mine.